Bharatiya perspective is similarly rishis in meditative state found out these truths which are eternal, which are anadi, timeless, which are ananta, and then they codified and then told us and how to apply those principles to our life. That becomes dharma. Under our constitution, as under Bharatiya ethical concepts, civil servants are accountable to people, and under Bharatiya ethical concepts also, everyone, including civil servants, is finally, decisively accountable to oneself. Our judges, when they sit in the High Court or Supreme Court, the motto, my dear friends, the mission statement is from Mandukya Upanishad, and the sentence is Yato dharmas tato jayaha. Chanakya then understands that sukhasya moolam dharmaha, dharmasya moolam arthaha, mind you. That yes, material well-being, economic well-being is important enough to be the base, the foundation of what we call as dharma. Hold your breath to see a terrific, tremendous quantum jump when in the next sutra Chanakya says, Arthasya moolam rajya, state. That an economy can do well, people can flourish, agriculture, trade and commerce, industries, etc. can flourish if there is a proper backing of the state. So once again, my dear friends, as you know, Namaste and all my eternal best wishes for all of you. Here we are for Bharatiya Ethics Part 2. It was a good muhurta that Bharatiya Ethics Part 1 could be conducted on the very auspicious day of Gita Jayanti itself. And the essence of Bhagavad Gita itself is in the single term kartavya, and that too detached and excellent action. Nishkam Karma Yoga. And that day we went deep into juxtaposing Bharatiya ethical concepts with even the Western ethical concepts of ontology and teleology and reviewing Kant, and then going deeper and deeper into Bhagavad Gita. We also saw how that 47th shloka from the second adhyaya of Bhagavad Gita practically summarizes it all. And then how samatvam yoga uchyate, the equanimity. This is about the value called neutrality of civil services. Civil servants are to be equal to all. That is also Article 14, 15, 16, non-discrimination. And also Yogaha Karmasu Kaushalam is that civil services and all responsibilities are all about confronting complex issues in life, in existence. Sometimes some of them could be indeed moral dilemmas, and then our skill in finding the path across those moral dilemmas. A sense of Bharatiya ethics, as in Nishkam Karma Yoga. If you any day become lucky enough to even think of reading Gita Rahasya by Lokmanya Tilak, then on the very cover you will see the title Gita Rahasya Arthat Bharatiya Niti Shastra, Bharatiya Ethics. And then as Lokmanya Tilak also goes on to explain the riddle of karma, the analysis of karma action, and how we pursue the excellence of that karma. Throughout Gita Rahasya also, Lokmanya Tilak himself discusses all Western thinkers as of that point of time. And then there is a very deep comparative study of Bharatiya ethics approaching the corest of a core principle called the conscience. It is the intention behind action that defines the action. That brings me to now commence the second part that I intend to share with you. Like karma and the concept of nishkama karma, if I'm asked to pick up the essence of Bharatiya ethics, in fact, the essence of Bharatiya thinking, all Bharatiya philosophies of all versions, all mind-boggling variety of Vedic thinking and various schools, equally deep and mind-boggling, impressive, inspiring philosophy of Buddha thinking and Jain thinking, you will see that the concept of dharma slash dhamma is the core, is the synonym of ethics for Bharatiya setup. Dharma as pronounced in Sanskrit and the Pali Prakrut pronunciation as used by Bhagavan Buddha and the whole Jain tradition, the word is Dhamma. That Siddhartha begins to think of existential issues when he has to confront three different pains in human life, and he begins to think, what is human predicament? If everything is impermanent, then who am I, what am I, and what is, if anything, like ultimate truth? So he leaves all kingdom, all power, all external material beauty and richness in search of truth. And then on a certain Vaishak Purnima, when in the meditative state below the Bodhi Vruksha, as it is beautifully called, Bodhi itself means knowledge. And he realizes the truth, be it Vedic philosophy, Buddha or Jain philosophy, the ultimate nature of truth in all these Bharatiya philosophies is one. One. So to describe that with the word Advaita will be a perfect description. And then Buddha comes to Sarnath, where he was also performing his penance along with 5 others, and then explains to them his first, the famous Sarnath speech, which is also famously called Dhammachakra Pavartan. This is the Pali Prakrit pronunciation. The Sanskrit pronunciation will be Dharmachakra Pravartan. It is initiating the wheel of Dharma. So from Vedic times till literally today, Dharma/Dhamma is the core of all Bharatiya thinking, therefore Bharatiya ethics. The idea that someone establishes a religion is a completely un-Indian idea. We need to understand that there is no exact word in English and most other languages for Bharatiya word dharma. And dharma is not religion, and religion is not dharma. That which someone establishes and then says, this is the God I have found out. This is the book that the God I have found out has given to me. This is the path to reach that God, and that path goes through me, and therefore the institution called religion in Bharatiya way of looking at things, this is pantha, a path. Yes, someone performs sadhana, reaches that ultimate truth, understands, realizes, you may call that truth as God or with whatever name, and having reached that, begins to tell it to the whole world and people around him, her, that I have found it, this is the path goes through me, so you follow me. Bharatiya thinking says it is pantha. Pantha means a path. And straight from Vedas, when we say ekam sad vipraha bahudha vadanti, truth is one. Knowledgeable people call it with different names. So while that truth is one, we can understand that truth in different ways. We can put it in different terminologies. That doesn't make us enemies of each other. And while that one truth can be understood and described in infinitely variety of ways, that same truth also can be reached in different ways, equally in infinitely ways. That is pantha. So straight from ekam sad vipraha to the Guru of Swami Vivekananda, Ramakrishna Paramahansa, saying, Yatha mat tatha path. To each his own. And the pursuit of that truth called God and your realization of oneness with that God is perfectly okay with your own path. And dharma/dhamma in then Bharatiya thinking is not something that someone establishes. Dharma stands for basic integral principles of life only discovered by our rishis, by Bhagavan Buddha, by 24 arhatas from Rishabhadev to Bhagavan Mahavir, and then it goes through Upanishadic rishis and medieval saint poets down to even, there are such people even around us even now. So dharma is not something to be established. Bharatiya concept is it is one and one for all. It's for us to realize, understand, and then design our life accordingly. The closest metaphor would be that Newton does not establish new physics, saying, I have found out, and this is the nature of gravitational force. And that truth revealed itself only to me. And it is in my book, Principia Mathematica. And to reach that truth, to understand gravitation, you have to follow me, go through me. Otherwise, you are condemned, eternal hell, blah, 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 etc., etc. Newton does not establish gravitational force. Gravitational force is there. Newton found it out and then told it to us. Bharatiya perspective is similarly rishis in meditative state found out these truths which are eternal, which are anadi, timeless, which are ananta, and then they codified and then told us and how to apply those principles to our life. That becomes dharma. Then say 2.5 centuries after Newton, Einstein comes up and says, no, Newton's idea of gravitational force is not tenable. That gravitational force is not the inverse square law. That gravitational force between any two bodies is inversely proportional to the square of the distance. Einstein says there is no such gravitational force. He says it's only a space-time fabric which develops curvature because of the weight of mass over there. So is it like Einstein establishes theory of relativity? And then is it like then Einstein begins to fight with Newton, saying, my truth, my God is the only true God. There is only one God, and that is only true, and that is as revealed to me. So if you worship other gods, they are all false gods, and you deserve to die. You are living in ignorant period, and then the two fight with each other with armies and causing bloodshed and establishing empires and all, etc. Not the Bharatiya concept of dharma. It is Newton discovering one principle. And then Einstein, okay, he says, I got a different view of Satya, truth. And I'm presenting that to you. So in Bharatiya concept, dharma is not something to be established by some person. And with some very specific defined book itself, which is directional, which issues directives, do this and don't do this, etc. Dharma are the basic integral principles of existence. Those who reveal them, they state them. And then say, we need to organize our life accordingly in consonance and in oneness with those concepts of dharma. So in Bharatiya concept, nobody establishes dharma. It is there. Actually, therefore the term Sanatan, it has nothing to do with backward thinking. Unfortunately, with some passage of time, the term Sanatan has come to mean something old, something superstitious, etc. The original meaning is these are timeless truths. They are not even bound by space-time. They were discovered by rishis, told for us, including how we organize our life accordingly. That is dharma. Even at the risk of repetition, let me tell you that there is no English synonym for the term and the concept of dharma/dhamma. Even Buddha and the whole Jain tradition goes on to explain dhamma. What is our dhamma? And then in our ethos, dharma also means niti, morality, mind you, that it emerges from dharma. When we say, even in colloquial, this is true of all Bharatiya languages, that what you did is adharma. What does it mean? What you did is adharma. It means it was immoral. It was unethical. So dharma also means niti, ethics. Dharma also means justice, mind you, nyaya. That someone misbehaves, misuses one's own power, uses the power for personal self-interest, even as a civil servant, then spontaneously an Indian person immersed in Indian civilization will say, what you are doing is adharma, because it is anyaya, injustice. Dharma also means justice. Dharma also means duty, mind you, swabhava and swadharma, and where even Shri Krishna summarizes by saying, Sahajang karma kaunteya sadoshamapi na tyajet. Sahaja, something that is spontaneous for you, that is built into you. You do that karma, that is your swabhav. And everyone can reach that final truth by following one's own swabhava. Sve sve karmanya bhirata samsiddhim labate naraha. That by devotion to one's own action through one's own nature, everyone can reach that final truth. Call it God, call it Brahma, call it with whatever name. It's only the name, and it doesn't make any change in what it means. Fortunately, I must tell you, even at my personal level, I develop a sort of a sense of a relief and happiness when modern India also has the motto, the mission statement of our judiciary. Okay, fortunately, again, written, enshrined behind our judges when they sit in the High Court or Supreme Court. The motto, my dear friends, the mission statement is from Mandukya Upanishad, and the sentence is Yato dharmas tato jayaha. Modern India under the Constitution. Yato dharmas tato jayaha. Where there is dharma, there is victory. So when even the judiciary as independent autonomous institution delivers justice, then it is dharma. And then the true victory is in following this dharma. Or whatever is the controversy. But sadly, beginning February 27, 2002, two particular bogies of Sabarmati Express were burnt down by, of course, terrorists, in which car sevaks returning from Ayodhya were burnt alive. And Gujarat exploded with riots. The controversy still goes on. I am referring to that sad, painful controversy because the Prime Minister of India at that point of time, Atal Bihari Vajpayee, told the then Chief Minister Narendra Modi, अपने राज धर्म का पालन करो.
नहीं, चीफ मिनिस्टर के लिए मेरा एक ही संदेश है कि वो राज धर्म का पालन करें.
What is he talking about? So when Prime Minister tells the Chief Minister of a riot-stricken state, अपने राज धर्म का पालन करो. What is that Raj Dharma that then Prime Minister Atalji was referring to? Then of course Bharatiya ethos says it is the duty of the king, which means all administrators, to be equal to all, doing justice to all. That is irrespective of caste, clan, region, religion, sex, etc., etc. You are sitting there in the position of power. Apne Raj Dharma ka palan karo. It is your duty, it is your dharma. There is nyay, there is niti in it, that your job is to protect all with equanimity and with equal hand. So, apne dharma ka palan karo. And then our judiciary, still accepting this Upanishadic principle of Yato dharmas tato jaya. I hope your mind spontaneously tells you that even our national mission statement also comes from Upanishads, where we say Satyameva Jayate. Mind you, that truth alone wins. So that truth with capital T, Satya, the ultimate form of whatever we perceive as oneness, the Advaita, as the source of that dharma. And then as that translates into our being, then our lives head in the direction of welfare. All those concepts literally even listed in the syllabus of GS4, mind you. Whatever are named as civil service values. I hope your mind begins to see the deep roots in Bharatiya philosophy. Think of integrity, that is character, as a civil service value, that civil servants are to be men of character. Character will mean being straightforward, being clean, being efficient. It would mean following the model code of conduct for civil servants. It's not like these are my duty hours from 10 to 6 and I will discharge my duty between these 10 to 6. No. Even under formal rules, okay, All India Civil Service rules, civil servants are on duty all 24 hours. So if the working hours are 10 to 6, it is only a practical convenience, especially in light of the fact that even civil servants are human beings. They need rest. They have families. They have like husband, wife, sons and daughters, parents, etc. to look after. But don't forget that under the law, as is codified in All India Civil Service rules, civil servants are on duty 24 hours. So civil servant can never say, I'm off duty. It's my holiday. My duty hours are over, etc. Not under the ethics defined for civil servants. This is also properly defined, saying that leaves and holidays also cannot be claimed as a right by civil servants. Only thing you can claim is commitment to duty. That is, apne dharma ka palan karo. So, even the basic terms called civil service values, you will begin to see them naturally emerging from your understanding of dharma/dhamma. Integrity. I am not to follow casteism. I am myself neither to give or take dowry in my marriage. No partiality, no use of power for self-interest. Bharatiya ethics also tells bureaucrats to conquer their egos, to control their senses also. And the code of conduct for civil servants also defines a principle. The phrase we would do well to understand here is behavior unbecoming of a civil servant. There is a clause in All India Civil Service rules that it's not like I was saying a while ago that I'm sitting there from 10 to 6 in my office doing my duty. Okay. What I do before 10 a.m. and what I do after 6 p.m. is not none of your business. A civil servant is not allowed to say so. While he or she is on duty all 24 hours, there is a certain code of conduct, a definitely ethical behavior that is expected of a civil servant. Otherwise, it is behavior unbecoming of a civil servant, mind you. So, if a civil servant becomes addict of, say, alcohol, cigarette, tobacco, it is not within the code of conduct for even civil servants. Civil servant can't say it is 10 to 6. Who the hell are you to ask me what I do beyond that? And then, unfortunately, recently we are coming across such a collapse of character that unfortunately considerable number of civil servants are using their powers for personal benefit. From the standpoint of ego, it's a that this is service to people is forgotten. And so in the office, they sit down for a drunken party. What are they celebrating? What are they behaving? Or misusing misusing that power for misbehaving with women, extracting undue benefits, etc., falls all under behavior unbecoming of a civil servant. Doesn't matter whether he or she was on duty at that point of time. You are a responsible civil servant. I remember one particular time when this accused Sanjay Dutt was brought over from Mumbai to Pune Yaroda jail. And the police in uniform, instead of discharging their duty, were so overwhelmed by whatever they thought was Sanjay Dutt's charisma. I must tell you, it completely beats me. How can an accused in a crime as serious as serial bomb blast in Mumbai, okay, even have charisma? And the police on duty there in the uniform, okay, going literally overboard to shake hands with Sanjay Dutt. Can you come up and say they are doing their duty? Where is the problem if they are shaking hand with an accused? Then no. These ethical principles say it is behavior unbecoming of a civil servant. Someone gets drunk, someone misbehaves even with his own wife or kids, or out there in public life, someone misuses, uses foul language, etc. It is still behavior unbecoming of a civil servant. Okay, why? There comes the next critical principle of accountability. That civil servants are accountable. And under our constitution, as under Bharatiya ethical concepts, civil servants are accountable to people. And under Bharatiya ethical concepts also, everyone, including civil servants, is finally, decisively accountable to oneself, conscience. You cannot deceive your own conscience. Decisions you are taking, problems you are solving, files you are signing, the way you are talking to people, letters you are writing, it is to be transparent behavior, which is answerable to people. And even the methodology of functioning needs to be transparent. Then, compassion for weaker sections of society is straight the Buddha's karuna that he taught. It's a beautiful word, mind you. Karuna is not pity. Karuna is born in one's own mind, heart, whatever one's own being, okay? Only when we understand the other person's pain. That is karuna. It's not sympathy. I have already told you that even modern psychology says that the greatest expression of intelligence, okay? What is the greatest expression of intelligence? Is it you score 100% marks in an exam? Or you get admission to science faculty? Or pick up PCB or PCM and respectively give NEET or CET and then get elected for engineering or medical or IITs, blah, 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 etc., etc. Top-notch score in civil service exam. Bharatiya ethos has always maintained, and Buddha's words are Prajna, Shila, and Karuna. Prajna stands for intellect, the razor-sharp intelligence that understands what is going on. But intelligence alone does not make us humane or even divine. Intelligence has to be defined by Shila, character, Charitra. And the true Prajna and Shila and the highest expression is in birth of Karuna in our mind. Literally, my dear friends, Jari eka ashru pusaya sala. Even modern psychology has empirically, with scientific evidences now proven that greatest act of intelligence is to understand other person's pain and then do something to sort out, ease, solve that pain. You are sitting as an officer, people approach you with whatever are their complaints. If you are insensitive, if you are opaque, if you think such and such a law and that principle and give me application in triplicate or 6 copies and all, the whole human factor behind it is lost. Then you haven't understood what is karuna. My extremely favorite example also comes from Prabhu Shri Ram, mind you. There is a 2-line shloka by Prabhu Shri Ram. And he says, Na tvaham kamaye rajyam, na vaibhavam va punarbhavam. So young Rama, sentenced to 14 years of vanvas just when he was to be the prince, that he will be the next Chakravartin and the Samrat at Ayodhya, but everything is withdrawn and he has to go for 14 years of vanvas. But that Rama says, Na tvaham kamaye rajyam, na tu aham. Kamaye, I don't wish, I don't want. Kamana, meri ichha. I don't want. Na tvaham kamaye rajyam. I'm not after kingdom and power. Na vaibhavam va punarbhavam. Vaibhavam, the richness, especially material richness. So Rama says, I'm not seeking even that. Punarbhavam is reincarnations. That for me to keep taking these material bhoga, I look forward to being born again and again, etc. So Rama says, Na tvaham kamaye rajyam, na vaibhavam va punarbhavam. And then he explains what he wants. Kamaye dukkha taptanam, prani nam arti nashanam. What a beautiful line. Rama explains, what do I wish? What do I will? What do I want? Kamaye, मुझे किस बात की कामना है, मैं क्या चाहता हूं, माझी इच्छा काय. Then Rama says, Kamaye dukkha taptanam, people suffering from pain, dukkha. Praninam, beings, prani, beings, arti nashanam, the artha, that is that inner pain, the existential pain, the excruciating pain, the answerless pain that makes us suffer, the suffering that Buddha understood and also showed the path of releasing from that suffering. Rama also says, that's the only thing I look forward to, I want. Kamaye dukkha taptanam, praninam arti nashanam. I want to release beings from their excruciating pain. That is what Buddha tells in Karuna. That is also what Bhagavad Gita also tells us in a shloka. Again in the second adhyay, it says, Nasti buddhirayuktasya, na cha yuktasya bhavana, na cha bhavayatas shantir asantasya kutas sukham. You will see a beautiful, logical, scientific link between mind, intellect, values, finding true sukha, happiness in life through yoga. So the shloka says, Nasti buddhir ayuktasya, someone who is not regularly pursuing yoga of different versions. It could be karma yoga, jnana yoga, bhakti yoga, or raja yoga. But the mind behind what you are doing is important. Only karma doesn't become karma yoga. When you perform karma as yoga, then it becomes yoga. Otherwise, it is only ritual. Similarly, pursuit of knowledge itself is yoga, as long as there is that conscious mind behind that pursuit of knowledge. Then one is following the path of jnana yoga. Similarly, bhakti, the devotion to divine principle or God. So, like Tukaram also reminds us that only clapping or banging tal or wearing typical some mala, etc., or something on the forehead, it is not dharma. Is itself not dharma. These are all means. But the bhakti, the devotion, it could be devotion to duty. For civil servants, it is devotion to people. And devotion to people as defined in the constitution, then it becomes bhakti yoga. And remember, similarly, Raja Yoga, Surya Namaskar, asanas, the pranayamas, and final meditation, if there is not that mind behind it, the consciousness, then even that Raja Yoga will turn into some acrobatics alone. So the principle of consciousness behind our action being important, and then that is yoga, then you will find your buddhi. The one who doesn't follow that yoga, nasti buddhira yuktasya. The one who is not following that path of yoga will not find buddhi. Nasti buddhira yuktasya, na cha yuktasya bhavana. So you will see the logical link between buddhi and bhavana, intellect and mind, the emotions. They are not exclusive of each other. India has understood for thousands of years, which modern psychology also is showing, that mind and intellect, heart and brain are only metaphorical, but they are not mutually exclusive. In fact, there is a direct link between emotions and intelligence. Sometimes we say some person is very emotional. Almost by default, we mean to say that he's not as intelligent as some, but he's emotional. He gets carried away. He sees someone's pain and begins to weep. He's not able to hold his own nerves, etc. He's a very emotional person. Okay. We need to understand that being emotional is not a negative thing at all. In fact, being emotional is an indication of being intelligent. It's only about our ability to get hold of ourselves. There is a direct link between being emotional and being intelligent. That's what also Bhagavad Gita and now modern psychology also says. So, nasti buddhir ayuktasya nacha yuktasya bhavana nacha bhavayata shantir. The pursuit of peace. After all, what do we want in life? Are we not looking for sukha? Sukha. You can call it ananda. You can call it happiness. And sukha, ananda at material level, psychological level, intellectual level, and finally, to the extent to which you agree, it is also at the spiritual level. Again, spiritual is a very shallow word to denote Bharatiya word adhyatma. But this sukha, pursuit of happiness, even the American Constitution says right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. So, pursuit of happiness as a fundamental right. Even Indian Constitution accepts that every being's fundamental right is sukha. Sukha. And then this logical link between emotion and intelligence, and then that taking us to shanti. And then he says, the shloka in Bhagavad Gita, nasti buddhir ayuktasya nacha yuktasya bhavana nacha bhavayata shantir. The one who doesn't have rich emotions, how can he or she find peace? Okay. Ashantasya kutas sukham. If you don't find peace, how will you find sukha, the true happiness in your life? So, being rich in emotion and intellect also is an integral part of being rich human being. You will actually see that defined in the concept of emotional quotient, mind you. And no wonder the original modern father or architect of the concept of emotional quotient, this is Daniel Goleman, was a regular follower of Bharatiya philosophy, including Vedanta and Buddhism. He was a regular practitioner of yoga, including meditation. He was very close to many Bharatiya Adhyatmic movements and very close to His Holiness Dalai Lama also. It is from that deep study that he presented a modern concept of emotional quotient on a very less important part. It's a part of UPSC and GS4 syllabus. Very much of a quality required for a civil servant. Emotional quotient gets defined in 5 factors. The first and the most important of them is self-awareness, knowledge of the self. How far are you aware of what you are, who you are, including what are your likes and dislikes, how you respond, how you believe, how you feel, how you handle files, etc. So, ability to get hold of oneself. But that is born out of self-awareness. Then comes the principle in EQ, is your ability to manage your emotions. Do they get control of you or do you control them? If they control you, then your degree of freedom is limited, contracted. But if you are able to get hold of your emotions, being able to manage those emotions, that as a human being or as an officer, I'm sitting there doing my duty. But something happens, some pain comes my way, some great success comes my way, some injustice comes my way, sometimes I get some extraordinary opportunity, etc. Am I able to get hold of them? Am I able to manage those emotions and then control them as per the path I want them to follow? Becomes an integral factor of emotional quotient. That is that person emotionally intelligent? This is the definition of emotional intelligence. Okay. Then the concept of emotional intelligence also has ability to communicate, the communication skill. How are you able to present yourself and how are you able to understand others also and explain your position, carefully pay attention to the position that others say. And among the last ones, but a very important, very intense, very beautiful defining principle of emotional intelligence, indeed, my dear friends, is resilience. Resilience, that is emotional toughness, your ability to bounce back. An important factor of that will be your ability not to get carried away by success or not to be depressed by failure. Indeed, its Marathi description is absolutely bang on target. यशानी चढून न जाणे आणि अपयशानी खचून न जाणे. You people will agree with me when I say that it is easier not to be dejected by failure. It is more difficult not to be carried away by success. अपयशानी खचून न जाणं तुलनेने सोपं आहे. Because you are at least seeing the goal, the target, that, okay, I suffered, I failed, but I will continue. Real test of character is who you are and how you hold yourself when you are successful. Because unfortunately, success has a natural propensity to go to head. And within no time, egos bloat. Then rest assured, it is beginning of the end. But yashane chadun na jane, not being carried away by success or not being feeling dejected by failure, is an integral component of emotional intelligence. As Daniel Goleman defined in modern times, it is all based on Bharatiya Adhyatmic philosophy. The beautiful term resilience is my toughness. It's not just the toughness of the body, it is the toughness of the mind also. That if I think at a certain point of time in my life I took a beating, okay, that doesn't beat me, I'm not lost. I may have lost one battle, but the war is on and I'll bounce back and win the war. So this ability to bounce back is resilience. One of my favorite modern day thinkers is still alive, and may he go on to be alive for over 100 years, is Nicholas Nassim Taleb. He has written many extraordinary, beautiful books. Do read them. Right now, I will not conduct a session on his extraordinary books, but the one I am referring to is about 400 pages. The title of that book is Anti-Fragile. A very carefully constructed term, and through 400 pages he goes on to explain. So anti-fragile, why is he using and coining this particular term anti-fragile? Can't he just say resilient? In the book itself, Nicholas Nassim Taleb explains why he has deliberately coined the term anti-fragile. And while it includes the element of resilience, it is not exactly the synonym for resilience. So why anti-fragile? Okay, he says everyone, as a human being, we are all fragile. Agreed. We are all fragile. But then the essence of our being is in developing tough and coming out with tough responses every time our fragility is challenged. Something comes our way, hitting our fragility, then he says that very thing must help us turn our fragility into strength. So he carefully, deliberately calls the term anti-fragile. That becomes a part of civil service values, mind you. So the compassion for weaker sections of society, not using powers for personal gain, and the karuna that Buddha and Bhagavan Mahavir also taught us, all essentially summarized in the single word dharma/dhamma. That brings me to 4 principles of Chanakya that I want to explain to you today. Chanakya in his Arthashastra and many of the sutras that Chanakya goes on to explain. It's a rather unfortunate thing that many even knowledgeable people and textbooks, etc., put Chanakya and Machiavelli in the same bracket, calling them as pragmatic and realist thinkers. But there is a fundamental difference which is missed. And then once you understand that difference, you will see that Machiavelli and Chanakya are not comparable at all. In fact, comparing Chanakya and Machiavelli is either like a greatest of an honor to Machiavelli or a greatest of an insult to Chanakya. Machiavelli, the 15th, 16th century Italian thinker, who is supposed to be sort of the original thinker of Italian nationalism, all okay. His treatise on political science, The Prince, explains state with capital S and king as the ruler, so the ruling class and all. Machiavelli is realistic, yes. So he says there are no moral considerations for pursuit of power. According to Machiavelli, power itself is a value. Power is value neutral. Pursuit of power is amoral, if not immoral. But when it comes to Machiavelli, what we perceive as immoral thing, Machiavelli plainly says prince is entitled to do that. Okay? So, for Machiavelli, coming to power and staying in power is an end in itself. Not so for Chanakya. Yes, Chanakya is realist. Yes, Chanakya is pragmatist. He is hard-nosed. His feet are solidly on the ground. But what sets Chanakya completely apart from Machiavelli is that for Chanakya, power and pursuit of power, so coming, achieving, attaining, getting power, and then sticking to power, for Chanakya is not an end in itself. For Chanakya, power is a means to an end, is a sadhana for a sadhya. For Chanakya, the sadhya is people's welfare. Make no mistake about it. That the duty of the king is total commitment to people. Chanakya does say that king is king because people have allowed him to be the king. Chanakya says the king can continue to be king only as long as people let him continue to be the king. Chanakya lays down a code of conduct for the king, including deeper you go, you will be more pleasantly surprised. Mind you, there is also a personal code of conduct for king. King should not develop any addiction. King should not take to vices of those years, so like Zugar, Matka, Dyut. King wants, Chanakya wants that any such king so devoted to these addictions, then doesn't deserve to be the king. In Chanakya's list of what authorizes people to dislodge the king from his position, okay? In that list, Chanakya says, if king becomes unfair, unjust, if the king himself begins to commit atrocities on people, if the king does not take care of his people, like he would take care of his own sons and daughters. So the king's duty is to look after entire people like his own sons or daughters. Then Chanakya says people can pull him down. In that list by Chanakya, hold your breath and get ready to be happy. Chanakya says, if the king levies heavy taxes on people, so he's so careful about that. And in Chanakya's Arthashastra itself, he lays down the maximum rate of taxation. How much money should state recover from people in form of taxes so that statecraft can go on? Huh? The limit laid down by Chanakya is 16%. 16%. Almost, to use the modern terminology, it is like state collecting 16% of GDP. What should be the GDP tax ratio? Chanakya lays down that not more than 16%, normally speaking. Chanakya does say that in warlike situation, in unusual situations, yes, but then those are temporary, and then Chanakya lays down that the moment such situations are away, tax rate should come back to the original one. So Chanakya even lays down, because, my dear friends, never make a mistake, never mix up. For Machiavelli, power is an end in itself. So pursuit of power has no moral considerations whatsoever. My ambition, I want to come to power, and coming to power and then holding on to power is an end in itself, the goal. Not so for Chanakya. That's the most fundamental difference. For Chanakya, yes, I repeat, he is realist. He understands how power struggle is ruthless. He also understands what is codified in a latter year sentence in English, that is, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. He also understands that pursuit of power itself is maybe at least amoral, if not immoral. And it's a ruthless pursuit. And still, for Chanakya, coming to power and holding on to power is not an end in itself. For Chanakya, power is a means to achieve a goal. The goal is people's welfare, mind you. Two-line shloka by Chanakya himself summarizes it most beautifully. It is Praja Sukhe Sukham Rajnyaha. That the sukha, happiness, ananda of Rajnyaha, Raja, so the ruling class for us, including civil servants in modern day under the constitution. Okay? Chanakya says, the sukha of ruling class is in the sukha of common people, praja, people. Praja sukhe, sukham rajnyaha, praja hite cha hitam. Whatever is the welfare of people is the welfare of the king and the ruling class. Okay? Then Chanakya goes on to say, Natma priyam rajnyaha. It's a very important statement that Raja, ruling class, doesn't even have a right to have one's own sukha and priya. What is my happiness and what do I like? My likes and my dislikes. Chanakya denies. Natma priyam rajnya. Why? Praja nam tu priyam hitam. The priya and the hita, welfare, what is good for people is good for you. Another beautiful words that Chanakya has used for describing the institution of king, which for us it is the ruling class, including civil services. He says, Raja is Upabhoga Shunya Swami. See, what a beautiful description. Upabhoga Shunya Swami. Is he Swami, the owner? Yes, sitting there. He holds the land, the kingdom, the sovereignty, okay, people under him, everything. But he's not supposed to enjoy, upabhog, consume all of it. It's not for him. So again, the best attitude described in Bharatiya words, which lay down this ultimate ethical principle, idam na mama. Idam na mama. That the ruling class, now civil servants, are upabhoga shunya swamis. They may be sitting there at district magistrate. So the district is under them. In a way, people, they are supposed to serve the people. To do that, they may have ample powers, etc. But not one thing is for their personal upabhoga, personal material pursuit, etc. They are to behave like upabhoga shunya swami, with the ethical principle of idam na mama. Idam na mama is, this doesn't belong to me. The car that I have, the red or amber color lamp that may be revolving at the top of that car, and the big office that I have, and a big bungalow that I have, and this power that I have, etc. All of it, idam na mama. Okay, this doesn't belong to me. Who does it belong to? The answer from Chanakya to our constitution is, it belongs to people. You derive it from people. And thus Chanakya comes to these four extremely cardinal principles, logically connected with each other. I hope as we proceed towards the latter part of today's session, in fact, allow me to say, in spite of a tiring day, happily tiring, of course, it is these very ideas that give me strength. Like in saying idam na mama and natma priyam radnya and upabhoga shunya swami, the modern day program for bureaucratic reforms is rightly given the name Mission Karma Yogi. It's the right now, the program is unfolding. So like last time we saw, however symbolic the changes are, but they at least begin to indicate what kind of attitudes are required. That every day, when civil servants in Delhi travel to South Block or North Block, until recently they were traveling across Rajpath, the British Kingsway, sort of either reminding them or making them think that they are traveling on the path of power, Rajpath. Change of the name, to say the least, indicates the change of attitude, that it's not Rajpath, it is Kartavya Path. And if new buildings in Delhi come up to house various offices of various departments, etc., they get the name Kartavya Bhavan. That while you step into this one, remember what you are entering is Kartavya Bhavan, not Adhikar Bhavan. You have been given Adhikar powers, not for your personal sake, but for discharging this duty, Kartavya, so duty. So the whole program developed by current government of India, which is in the pipeline and being implemented, comes to be called Mission Karma Yogi. And like Daniel Goleman developed the concept of EQ, here is Abraham Maslow, who also defined what is called the 5-factor theory. It also came to be called the theory of hierarchical needs. And Maslow arranged human needs in a certain sequence, or it came to be perceived that Maslow stated them that these are human needs that need to be fulfilled in a sequence. Actually, later on, Abraham Maslow has gone on to explain that while I have defined these 5 as driving factors for human pursuit of whatever, including happiness in life, they are not necessarily interconnected in a sequential fashion. That the first should be fulfilled, then human being goes to the second, then third, fourth, and finally to the. He did explain that, but it has sort of stuck. So, as Abraham Maslow's theory, the 5-factor theory, the theory of hierarchical needs, he says the most basic are whatever are our needs for survival, basic survival, okay, food, etc., food, cloth, etc. So our basic, even physical material survival is at the bottom. Okay. Then he says once that are done, probably the next stage is, then he says various types of gratification, including sexual gratification. Then man looks for all that. Okay. Then he goes on and say, then there is a psychological level of we want to pursue some activities, derive happiness from them, etc. Then the fourth one he says is like social recognition, etc. That everyone thinks I'm so and so. People bow to me, etc. Social. But then finally, Maslow reaches the fifth and the highest level, which is beautifully called as self-actualization. The words that Maslow uses are self-actualization. That where you look forward to finding yourself, knowing yourself, finding the truth, reaching the final truth, etc. And then you realize that whatever is that final truth, you are the expression of that truth being Tattvamasi. Okay? Abraham Maslow is on record himself, including all sorts of circumstantial links also, which show his involvement with Bharatiya philosophy, especially when he sort of conceived and gave a modern terminology for hierarchical needs or five-factor theory. It is basically the concept of Pancha Kosha, that every human being has five kosha. Kosha, I have to tell you, doesn't have exact English words. Sheets or covers, and these are very shallow words for this kosha. So at the material level, all of us have what Bharatiya philosophy describes as Annamaya kosha. So this is basically, Anna is basically our need for food. So basic survival depends on that. Okay. But once we understand that, and then we realize that that's not the final of our being, the ultimate truth of our being. Okay. There is something beyond that Annamaya. So our word for it is Pranamaya. Prana. That okay, you eat food, you sleep, you drink, your body has, but it is upheld by some energy which Bharatiya philosophy calls as prana. So there is pranamaya kosha. Then you reach that level where you follow pursuits accordingly. Then the third level, and what is beyond pranamaya kosha is manomaya kosha, is the mind. Then you can understand that as mind. So ideas of happiness, what makes us happy beyond material pursuits. So if music appeals to us, art appeals to us, painting and dance and drama, this is all manomaya kosh, which is operational. But then our journey towards the final truth continues. Then we reach vijnanamaya kosh, are the intellectual or pursuits of intellect in Bharatiya philosophy called buddhi, is vijnanamaya kosh. And then we finally reach where we understand Anandamaya Kosh is our true self nature. You will actually see the parallels between Maslow's five so-called hierarchical needs and Annamaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha, Manomaya Kosha, Vijnanamaya, and finally the Anandamaya is understanding the true nature, which Bharatiya philosophy says all of us truly are Sat, Chit and Ananda Swarup. And you need to find out yourself. That is that final level of self-actualization. That brings me to these four absolutely beautiful and interlinked principles. So Chanakya starts out by saying, Sukhasya Moolam Dharmaha. So Sukha, as the most basic pursuit and everyone's absolute fundamental human right, Sukha, like I already told you, that we human beings, after all, are in search of what? Even the utilitarian philosophy says people want to avoid pains and want to get pleasures. And Bentham and Mill and all enlisted types of pains in life and types of pleasures in life. And then summarized an ethical principle saying everyone seeks to have surplus of pleasure over pain. It is pursuit of happiness. And then based on that principle, Bentham, Mill, and utilitarian thinkers, they say that the policy that should guide behavior of the state, capital S, is greatest good of the greatest number. So from then to the American Constitution, deepest of Bharatiya philosophy, absolutely valid even today, that what are all of us looking for? Nobody will deny that the term Sukha or another beautiful deep term Ananda is what all of us are looking for. It could be material Sukha, it could be mental Sukha, it could be psychological Sukha, it could be spiritual, Adhyatmic Sukha. Another day, another time, I have explained how Bhagavad Gita classifies Sukha in three categories of Sattva, Raja, Tama. Today I am not going to do that because now watch tells me that I may not have time. Today I need to summarize these four interconnected sutras stated by Chanakya. So the first one is Sukhasya Moolam Dharma. From every individual to people, whatever name you give them, you can, various social institutions like say family or political institutions like state, etc., or whatever. The source of that sukha is in dharma, concept of dharma, where we have given reasonable time today. Then Chanakya goes deeper and says, hold your breath. He says, dharmasya moolam artha, the economic being. We don't have to be Marxist to understand the fundamental importance of economic being. While the difference is, Marxism calls economic being as the only base. Everything in life, according to Marxism, flows from or emerges from economic being. Every motive, every cause, every pursuit, economic consideration is the base, and whatever you think is born out of it, the institution of family, the political institution called state, yet another institution called religion. Marxism and socialism goes to the extent of saying that relationship between father, mother and their kids is also based on economic consideration. I want to say that in a way Marxism is shallow. Marxism demeans human existence. Bharatiya philosophy tells us that there are four prime movers of life, equally important: dharma, artha, kama, moksha. All four equally important. And then Bharatiya philosophy says artha and kama. So artha is economic or material being. It's not understated. It is important. Kama also is equally important. Don't mistake kama to mean only sex. Sex is integral part of kama, but kama is wider, including all sorts of desires. And Indian ethics does not demean either artha or kama. They are considered as respectable, dignified pursuits for human existence. But then our ethical principle says that artha and kama need to be governed by dharma, not unbridled materialist pursuit of consumption, bhogavad, okay, including not unbridled animal-like pursuit of everything, including sex. That this evolved species called human beings, how does it differ from other animal-like species in all terms, including, my dear friends, sex? Bharatiya ethics seeks to elevate even sex. Kama and kama prerana is not considered anything negative, anything foul, etc. But we need to sublimate artha and kama by ensuring that they are governed by dharma. And Chanakya then understands that sukhasya moolam dharma, dharmasya moolam artha, mind you. That yes, material well-being, economic well-being is important enough to be the base, the foundation of what we call as dharma. Mind you, for you and me, even in modern times, Swami Vivekananda said, religion is not for empty bellies. Vivekananda, who was deeply pained to see India in 19th century, the wretched poverty and inequality and all, he had that clear idea to understand that all adhyatma, all dharma, etc. is only after your bellies are filled. So he said, religion is not for empty bellies. Dharmasya moolam arthaha. Gandhiji also said, if at all God is to be incarnated in modern India, he said, God will take form in form of bread, bhakri. भारतात जर ईश्वर अवतार घेणार असेल तर तो भाकरीच्या रूपाने घेईल. अगेन गांधीजी पेन by the wretched poverty that Indians were suffering from. Of course, largely the poverty induced by the British, but for people that bread is God. So, dharmasya moolam arthaha, that importance. Then again, hold your breath to see a terrific, tremendous quantum jump when in the next sutra, Chanakya says, arthasya moolam rajya, state. That an economy can do well, people can flourish, agriculture, trade and commerce, industries, etc. can flourish if there is a proper backing of the state. Arthasya moolam rajya, the concept of state, mind you. About 3 years ago, 3 economists got Nobel Prize for economics. 2 of them had written a beautiful book named Why Nations Fail. Okay, Why Nations Fail. They are James Robinson and Christian Acemoglu, 2 out of those 3 economists. The book, which is instrumental in getting them Nobel Prize for Economics, that book is Why Nations Fail, a 400-page beautiful book. But I can tell you basic one-line summary of the book. So if these 2 Nobel Prize winning economists are explaining why nations fail, their one-line summary of the 400-page book and a deep research of entire human history and various civilizations, one-line summary, why nations fail, their answer is because institutions fail. That various institutions that organize that society. So there are social institutions, there are economic institutions like banks, etc. Social institutions will include family, etc. And there are political institutions. So economy fails when state fails. We also describe India as a rich country consisting of poor people. Why do we describe ourselves as rich country consisting of poor people? Another Nobel Prize winning Indian economist Amartya Sen said, India is a desert of poverty with islands of richness, some islands of excellence or richness, etc. So, if the logical link brings us to here, to this place, Sukhasya Moolam Dharma, Dharmasya Moolam Artha. And then Chanakya defines state that Arthasya Moolam Rajya, the state and the institutions and the policies. So, right state policies will drive a society and economy towards welfare and richness, including material richness, etc. But if those political institutions fail, then the economy, etc., will fail. That brings us to the last, and again, my dear friends, the best and the greatest flight of deep understanding of human existence, human predicament. There is a sudden jump. Up to this, you may think it's all logical. And then suddenly Chanakya transforms into a very different one. So he says, Sukhasya Moolam Dharma. Dharmasya Moolam Arthaha. Arthasya Moolam Rajyaha. Now hold your breath. The tremendous flight of deep understanding that it takes is Rajyasya Moolam Indriya Nigraha. I'm taking a 10-second pause to let it sink in your mind. Those of you who may be taking down notes, for them also to properly note it down. Suddenly, the political institution called Rajya state, and Chanakya goes on to say, Rajyasya Moolam Indriya Nigraha, control of the senses. Those who are to run the state, those who make the state, those who govern the state, those who look after the people, that state, Rajyasya Moolam, Indriya Nigraha, control over senses, Indriya Nigraha. I hope you people begin to see the depth of Chanakya's understanding and why it is important for us also, those who prepare UPSC and all civil or any services and then seek to join. Rajyasya Moolam, Indriya Nigraha, your ability to control, restrain yourself, your sensory organs, your perception organs and all. Okay? Because everyone knows that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So you give competitive exam, clear that, get selected as IAS officer, the success goes to the head. Ego begins to get the better of it. Ego swells and the power and the chair go straight to the head, making you forget that this is for people's welfare. Even at subconscious level, officers or those who are sitting in positions of power begin to behave like it is their personal power, like it is their entitlement, like it is their right, and only my allowances and my pay commission and my increments and etc., ever forgetting what is the goal of that power. So those who sit in positions of power need to control their senses. Power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Having understood that, the Western political thinking for last approximately 350 years, okay, has traveled in a direction that, okay, if power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, the Western political approach is, I will summarize twofold, is avoid centralization of power. Okay, so the principle of division of power, that if power corrupts, okay, let no one person or one particular institution enjoy and exercise all the power. So the principle of division of power, mind you, you'll see that's the path found by Western political thinking. Therefore, legislature, executive, judiciary, it is division of power. That legislature will only have the right to make laws. Okay, and those laws also as people mandate. But they will not have power to execute the laws. That power is to be divided to another institution called executive. Executive will have the power to implement, but not the power to make the laws, or also not the power to interpret the laws. And then comes the third institution called judiciary, which is supposed to be independent, autonomous for the principle of division of power. Task handed over to judiciary is when it comes to interpreting the law. Interpreting. Judiciary normally does not get to make the laws. Judiciary normally does not also get to implement the laws. That is for respectively legislature and executive. Judiciary is there whenever there is difference of opinion about interpretation of the law, enter judiciary. So first one is principle of division of power. That if power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, then point number one, divide the power. See to it that there is no concentration of power. Ensure that not one single person or not one single institution rather becomes too powerful. So one principle is division of power. Second, equally important principle is principle of checks and balances. That then design the institutional structure in such a way that every other institution acts as a check and balance over other institutions. So if you have legislature, then principle of checks and balances says they are accountable to people. At the most, they have to face elections every 4 or 5 years. That is a check on their power. And then executive is made answerable to legislature. Why? Because legislature represents people's wishes. So executive, however powerful, principle of checks and balances says legislature exercises a check and a balance on the powers of executive. Okay. And then judiciary, as the watchdog of the constitution, as the protector of the rights of common man, judiciary acts as a balance and check over both these institutions, legislature and executive. So you will see however briefly but deeply, that the solution that Western political thinking found for the eternal principle called power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, they found answer in institutional structure and the principles of division of power and principles of balance and checks and balances. Okay? Bharatiya Samskruti in general, best represented by Chanakya, finds the answer in character building, people with great character. Those who exercise power need to be people who control their senses and have that rich moral content, knowing that this power is not for me, it is idam na mama, and they do not let their senses get the better of it. So, Rajyasya Moolam Indriya Nigraha. Chanakya also understands that those who sit in positions of power, yes, power has a tendency to go to head. Yes, egos do bloat. In Arthashastra itself, Chanakya has explained, okay, that like we can never know how and when fish drinks water, nobody can ever know how a government servant does corruption. Chanakya himself has explained 36 different types of corruption in Arthashastra. I hope even you begin to see that no system can ever be perfect. So if you seek answer only in the system of, say, division of power and principle of checks and balances, you will continually see this institutional conflict all over the world in all political systems. All. India, Britain, contemporary America also, it is legislature versus executive, executive versus judiciary, legislature versus judiciary, legislature and executive on one side versus executive, etc. Not only this one, but whatever system you design, people with low character, low morals can find the path of corrupting the system and performing corruption, whatever is the system design. No system is ever perfect. Not only that no system is ever perfect, no system can ever be perfect. You absolutely think of any systemic measure, there will at least be two interpretations of that system, which could be completely contradictory to each other and at the same time they could be true. Article 324 says there shall be Chief Election Commissioner. And that article says until Lok Sabha passes a suitable law of how Chief Election Commissioner will be appointed, until then, President shall appoint Chief Election Commissioner. And then the constitutional principle says President shall act on advice of the Council of Ministers. So it is the Council of Ministers that prepares the file, sends the name, and under our constitution, even originally, and more so consolidated under the 42nd Amendment, President is practically turned into a rubber stamp. He or she hardly has any choice. Okay. Then Supreme Court comes up after a writ and exercising its power says, yes, the article does say that until Parliament passes a law, but because Parliament has not passed a law, we are hereby directing them. And then Supreme Court says 3-member committee to appoint Chief Election Commissioner, Prime Minister, Leader of the Opposition, and Chief Justice himself. So Judiciary appoints itself on the committee that would appoint Chief Election Commissioner, whose cases Judiciary will hear. But a 3-member, is it positive? Is it negative? You will see that it can be interpreted in any which way. Completely contradictory to each other. One can say this is independence of judiciary asserting. The other can say judiciary is encroaching on the turf of legislature or executive. The other can say judiciary is self-appointing itself on the appointment committee, which is going to appoint an authority whose cases judiciary itself is going to hear. This one can say is fundamentally against the principle of natural justice also. Nobody shall sit in judgment over one's own case. But any which interpretation. Then Lok Sabha goes on to pass a law under which now a method. Okay, what judiciary said until Lok Sabha passes a law. Because Lok Sabha has not passed a law, here we are passing a law. Then Lok Sabha comes up and passes a law. Under that new law, there is a 3-member committee consisting of Prime Minister, a senior cabinet minister, and leader of opposition. Come on. This also can be interpreted in two completely contradictory ways. One can say that legislative and executive independence has been asserted. Undue interference of judiciary has been done. But the other one can say that the post of Chief Election Commissioner is more politicized because 2 out of 3 members are bound to agree. So what the leader of opposition alone is going to do, even if it is democratic functioning, it is always going to be 2 versus 1. So the government is going to get to appoint the Chief Election Commission of their choice. So here is the criticism. The answer lies in Rajyasya Moolam Indriya Nigraha. That is, no system can ever be perfect. No system is ever perfect. How that system performs, behaves, depends on the character of the people who would run that institution. They need to be above self. They need to be efficient, honest, transparent, men of character. One of the best examples, my dear friends, is indeed when our constitution was completed. And here in Delhi itself, a journalist asked Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, how good is the constitution? His answer, which I find eternally visionary, great visionary answer. So on being asked, how good is the constitution? Babasaheb Ambedkar's answer was, the constitution is as good or as bad as the people who would implement it. What a visionary statement. What I hear in what he is saying is, come on, we have done our best. Here we tried the synthesis of best of various constitutions and merged them with Bharatiya ethos, etc. But now it is up to the people who are going to be implementing this cause. If they are men of straw, if they are men of foul character, it's going to only remain the letter of the constitution while the spirit would be missing. That is what Chanakya is stating. Rajyasya Moolam Indriya Nigraha. So the importance of character building, the morality, people sitting in positions of power, understanding why they need to have a high moral character also, including their transparency, including 24 hours on duty, being answerable to people, the way in which we function to be transparent and all, and nothing for myself, capacity to rise above self. So the importance of character building, charitra nirman, and systems reform and character building has to go hand in hand. Therefore, Chanakya's fourth, actually the fifth one also is extremely meaningful. He says, how do you achieve Indriya Nigraha? He says, by learning Vinaya, politeness, being humble. People in positions of power need to be humble. Actually, being humble is a defining feature of being truly great. So, Chanakya's 4 principles. With that, I will happily say that I have passed on to you my best perception of Bharatiya ethics. As usual, I hope you have enjoyed. But now we are going to say our prarthana, and then you will allow me to go to my residing place in Delhi. Let us say our prarthana.